Have you ever wondered how long you would survive if you became lost in a medieval European forest? Not for an hour, not for an afternoon, but long enough for every familiar landmark to disappear, every direction to begin looking the same, and every decision to carry consequences you could no longer undo. For people living in medieval Europe, getting lost was not an inconvenience. It was often the beginning of a survival crisis. Long before modern maps marked trails or rescue teams, forests covered enormous parts of the continent. Dense woodland stretched for miles between villages, monasteries, and trading towns. Travelers crossed them because they had no other choice. Some reached the other side. Others simply vanished from the historical mentions. The recognizable traces of the wagon path began to vanish beneath the forest floor. Yet, the traveler pressed. The terrifying part was that the forest rarely attacked anyone directly. Instead, it slowly removed every advantage a person depended upon. First came uncertainty, then exhaustion, then mistakes. By the time real danger appeared, survival had already become far more difficult. Many medieval roads were little more than narrow. Dirt tracks worked into the landscape by generations of carts, horses, and walking feet. A heavy rain could erase sections of these paths. Fallen trees could block familiar routes. Animals crossing the road left fresh tracks that looked surprisingly similar to human ones. A traveler who stepped aside for only a few tracks that looked surprisingly similar to human ones. A traveler who stepped aside for only a few tracks that looked surprisingly similar to human ones. A traveler who stepped aside for only a few back the way they had come. The trees looked familiar. The terrain seemed recognizable. Surely the road could not be very far away. But forests create one of the most deceptive environments in nature. Without distant landmarks, every direction begins to resemble every other. Thick tree canopies hide the horizon. Hills interrupt lines of sight. Moss, fallen leaves, and shifting sunlight constantly change the appearance of the ground. Even experienced woodsmen sometimes discovered that what felt like a straight path gradually curved without them realizing it. Modern research has demonstrated that people who lose visual references often begin walking in circles. Tiny differences in stride length, unnoticed slopes, or the natural tendency to favor one side slowly redirect movement. Medieval travelers had no scientific explanation for this phenomenon, but many certainly experienced it. Imagine believing you are making steady progress for an hour, only to recognize the same broken tree you passed earlier that morning. At that moment, fear begins to change behavior.
Walking becomes slower. Stops become more frequent.
Every sound seems worthy of investigation. Time that could have been spent covering distance is instead consumed by hesitation. As daylight continues to pass, the forest itself changes.
Bird activity shifts. Wind moves through higher branches.
Long shadows alter the appearance of landmarks. Features that seemed obvious only an hour earlier become increasingly difficult to recognize. Meanwhile, the human body quietly begins consuming the resources it depends upon.
Every step burns energy.
Every decision requires concentration. Every wrong turn increases the distance needed to recover. In medieval Europe, food carried by ordinary travelers was rarely abundant. Bread, cheese, dried meat, or small quantities of grain needed to last the entire journey. Extra walking meant extra energy consumption. Extra energy consumption meant greater hunger long before reaching the intended destination.
Water created another challenge.
Clear streams existed throughout Europe's forests, but they were not evenly distributed. Some valleys offered fresh-flowing water. Others forced travelers to continue for hours before finding another reliable source. Searching for water often meant leaving whatever direction seemed most promising, increasing the likelihood of becoming even more disoriented. As uncertainty grows, people naturally begin searching for signs of civilization.
Smoke rising above trees.
The sound of church bells. The sound of church bells. Cartwheels. Voices.
Dogs barking.
Yet forests distort sound in unexpected ways. Wind carries noises across surprising distances.
Echoes bounce between hillsides.
Flowing rivers mask other sounds completely. A traveler might believe help lies only a short distance away, only to discover after an hour of walking that the sound has vanished entirely. Every unsuccessful search reduces confidence. Confidence influences decision-making more than many people realize. When confidence declines, people stop committing to one direction.
They double back.
They change course repeatedly. They revisit previous locations, hoping to recognize overlooked clues. These constant adjustments consume precious daylight, while producing very little actual progress. Meanwhile, the environment continues changing, regardless of human plans.
Clouds gather. Temperatures begin falling.
Moisture settles across leaves and exposed ground. Even gentle slopes become more dangerous after evening moisture settles. Eventually, continuing to walk becomes more dangerous than stopping. Experienced travelers understood when movement should end and preparation for the night should begin. Choosing the right place mattered as much as continuing to walk.
For many medieval travelers, surviving the night was the first step toward finding the road again at dawn.